Hi, this is Bart with the Bicycle Rider, and this is the 2020 Marin Rip Zone 2 Carbon hanging here in my backyard. And yeah, I'm without my cameraman Gary, so you just have to deal with a little bit less video quality today. But I was just excited about this bike, and I think a lot of you know I'm not the most tech-oriented person when it comes to talking about each individual component of the bike. But what you do get from me is the real, true ride reviews. I'm more of a bicycle rider, and I love to tell you about how a bike feels, how a bike rides, and I do have a lifetime of experience riding mountain bikes, so I think I'm pretty qualified to just letting you know how a bike feels. This is a size large. I usually ride a size medium. So a lot of my videos, I think you know, I talk about just how I like a bike. But this video here is coming from the perspective of some people I've let borrow this bike since I've had this bike in my hands. And I'm talking about some athletes that maybe have a lot of cycling experience, but not so much on the mountain bike side, that have maybe tried a bike of lesser quality, maybe a second bike that someone's had in their garage, and say, come on, let's go do some mountain bike riding. And the triathlete says, well, I'll give it a try. And they get out there on this older hardtail that's a little bit antiquated, and they're just not sure about the sport. Well, when I put a quality bike like the Marin Rip Zone 2 in these guys' hands, it really does open up a whole new perspective of how people can like and enjoy the sport of mountain biking and feel confident. You know, a lot of these guys, some of these experienced road riders and experienced triathletes that I try to get into the sport of mountain biking, and they really do help my training as far as me diving into their sport, because the athleticism of some of these guys really helps my game. But having these guys going out on the mountain bike trail really brings a lot of enjoyment to me, especially when they're liking it. And like I said, these guys are used to spending a little bit more money on equipment, and they don't mind it. So sometimes, you know, when they want to get into a new sport, it's not so much how much the equipment's going to cost, but how good is the equipment. And my experience is, when I've put them on a bike like this, the Marin Rip Zone 2 Carbon, you know, this is about a $4,300 bike MSRP. And so as far as bikes goes, it's definitely not an inexpensive bike, but it is a high quality bike for that amount of money. And these guys really don't mind spending that amount of money. They just want to know that they're getting something that rides good. So the total smile on their face after riding the Marin Rip Zone 2 Carbon has been astronomical and brings me joy, because these guys are actually able to ride this bike, feel comfortable doing it, and keep up with a group. You know, a lot of times it's tires and traction that get a new rider a little bit squirrely, a little bit on the edge about maybe taking a corner, coming into a corner hot and having things slide out. Well, with the suspension system that Marin has developed that really hugs the trail, and with the tires they put on this bike, these guys get confidence right away. While I'm talking, I'm just going to kind of do a walk around of this bike with this camera, just so you can see some of the components. But you know, big brake rotors. You know, when these guys hit the brakes, they can stop easy. Of course, SLX brakes, you know, just have a real good feel to it. I think in my first video I mentioned that it had a nice derailleur. This is a Shimano Dior XT derailleur. And I think I mentioned SLX. So, I mean, just everything on this bike, having the one by, is super nice for a new rider, because it's not so complicated up here on the cockpit. You know, they've got one lever to mess with, and they don't have to worry about a front derailleur that you really don't need on a modern trail bike anyway. This bike has some really nice, you know, suspension as far as Fox shocks go, and I'll get into more detail with the specs of the shock, but they just feel good. So when these guys were used to maybe a second bike that someone had in their garage, and they're out there hitting roots and jumps on a hardtail, as a new rider, you're wondering, why do people even like this? Well, I've had a couple riders say they didn't know the ride could be so good. And you know, that's nice when someone's not so used to you know, having that jarring effect as a mountain bike has on you, and feeling how the trail can really smooth out with modern technology. So I'm just really excited to put this bike in some riders' hands that maybe don't have the experience of some of us mountain bike riders, and just kind of letting you know that a bike like this, a modern trail bike, and Marin has put a lot of subtle touches into it as far as, you know, a little bit steeper head tube angle, an aggressive seat tube angle, and that has made the bike climb very easily, having a seat tube angle like this. And then just the component spec that they put on this bike really can make someone get on a mountain bike and make them feel like a much better rider than they actually are, make them feel confident and make them feel at home. And I think that's a real important part of the modern trail bike. And it's not all about price. You know, sometimes it's about how something rides. But when you can get into a bike at this caliber for a little over the $4,000 mark, I mean, that's a pretty high value price for as good of a bike as this is. And sometimes, you know, you can look at your components and say, well, you know, a bike with this group of components should cost about this much, and a bike at this group can cost this much. But I'm more about the feel and just the way that Marin has put this bike together. It feels super good. It's almost super intuitive for someone, even someone that's more used to riding an aero bike. Get out there on the trail and actually have fun, watch them smile and see, you know, meeting the mountain bike group, and it's a whole kind of different scene out there on the mountain bike trails and at the trailhead than it is, you know, at a triathlon race. And I'm not saying that's bad because you know, I like that stuff too, but it's just a whole different feel out there on the trail. And the modern trail geometry and the modern trail bike, like Marin has put together here in a value price package at about $4,000 or a little over, really does bring a smile to the face. And sometimes when you say $4,000 compared to, let's say, $6,000 or $7,000 for a comparable carbon fiber bike with this type of componentry, you know, $4,000 does, you know, help the bite a little bit when it comes to that. So let me just finish my little walk around. People really, they get on a wide bar like this and they're really like, oh, I don't know, this bar feels pretty wide. But once you get them into the trail and they feel the leverage of these bars and how they ride, they kind of understand a wide bar and a trail, you know, works good. And when I say this bike's kind of got a low, long geometry, that just helps the bike track very well. So just a quick video to let you know that you don't have to be the most experienced rider to enjoy a bike of this caliber. And the way, you know, Marin has spec'd this bike out and priced this bike, really, you know, most people that are going to be looking at a modern trail bike knows that this is in a pretty good price point. So from the bicycle rider, just another introduction to the Marin Rift Zone 2 Carbon. It's really a great bike, and for the money, it puts a smile on your face. And you know, a lot of these guys pay a lot for training programs and nutrition programs. And one guy explained, you know, I could put that money into a bike like this and come up with my own training program, because he was having so much fun out there and breathing fresh air and not worried about cars and helping his bike handling. He said this is invaluable. He now that he knows that he could ride a mountain bike and it could feel comfortable, and a lot of that is just having the right bike and a modern bike makes all the difference in the world. He said he is hooked. Triathlon's still going to be his main focus, but this is a great training tool for that, and it's good to mix it up a little bit. So from the bicycle rider, don't be scared to try different things, but it's always nice to do it on the right piece of equipment. 2020 Marin Rift Zone 2 Carbon could just be that for you. We're going to keep testing this bike, and as soon as I get a medium, I'll spend more time riding it myself and give you my personal opinion of it. But you know, I've ridden this large, and I think it's very nimble for a large bike, so I can't wait till I get a medium in my hands. All right, well, thank you.